Good evening and welcome to the coffee table. So a lot has happened in the last 1 week between India and Pakistan. We all know where it started from. 14th of Feb, there was a suicide attack on a convoy of the CPRF, which is the Indian Civil Armed Forces, and 40 plus people were killed in that attack. Since then, there was a ratcheting up of rhetoric in India. Media went absolutely berserk. And as a consequence, I think there was just no option except to carry out something and do something. So we had the first incident, right, which is cross-border, which was on the 26th of February, the morning of the 26th of February, early hours of the morning, where supposedly 8 Mirage 2000s violated Pakistani airspace, not just across the LOC, but actually came into Pakistan, into the KP province. And claims were made that they attacked 3 places during that incursion, and they destroyed targets, and 300 plus militants were killed. They also kept saying that this is a non-military strike. It is against the Jaish-e-Mohammed. But the evidence is missing. So we have with us today Hussain Nadim, who's a security and foreign policy analyst. So Hussain, where do we go from here? What happened? Right? Did they attack any Jaish-e-Mohammed camp? Was there enough evidence of that? And they made claims that it was destroyed and people were killed. But there is no evidence of that either. So what exactly was happening here? Is this just rhetorical?
I think most of this war has become rhetorical, given that it is driven by domestic political interests. The interest was never to actually eliminate Jaish-e-Mohammed, supposedly Jaish-e-Mohammed inside Pakistan. And even if we say that there were Jaish-e-Mohammed camps operating, let's give that for a second. It is unreasonable to believe that Jaish-e-Mohammed would be still operating and they hadn't vacated those sites if they were operating from there. So the question that they have targeted those sites, etc., is completely dubious. Not only based on the evidence, but even if we take the discourse that is coming out, it is so polarized within India that they're giving a head count which is impossible to actually give.
You can't verify it.
You can't verify it. Anyway. But given that this entire debate is driven by domestic political interests, the pressure on Indian government is actually to escalate it at the rhetorical level. They're not really concerned about the international audience right now. They're not concerned about the actual evidence on ground. What is the interest is how can we hyperventilate the Indian media and the people to claim a political victory, which unfortunately it didn't go as well as it was planned, because the Indians realized, and I kept hearing this thing over and over again, even from Barkat Dutt and other Indian journalists, that if the Americans can do it inside Pakistan when it comes to OBL, why can't India do it? And I kept repeating the same thing about this issue, that India has to have a reality check on this issue. It's not America, it's not Israel. So over-exaggeration of its own power and underestimation of Pakistan's resilience has caused a political chaos in India. And I think the only one who's come out as a loser in this is the Prime Minister next door.
It is. Huh? So you are, Mehr, you are a very avid social listener, right? So you've been following what Indian media has been on about. You've been following the Twitter chatter, a whole battle, a whole war has been fought on Twitter, right? So my own view is that there's been a lot of rationality and sanity from Pakistan, right? And it's absolutely the other way around when it comes to India. So people that you would expect to be rational, right? Even they have not been rational.
Hello, first of all, I'm just so happy that we're talking about it in on a platform where nobody's going to shout, where nobody's going to call the other one a liar. Like even what happens on Pakistani talk shows when we're talking about Pakistan and India. The thing is, it has not happened now. I'm not familiar with what Indian media was doing before 2014, but that is the time when I started watching Indian news shows, and I was invited to a number of them. I've been part of a lot of debates in which Indians blame Pakistan for everything, and there's one Pakistani sitting, a rational Pakistani like me, sitting quietly, and then you try to give your point of view. You present the truth, not my side of the story, but you tell them this is what's happening. This is what's happening in Pakistan vis-a-vis this issue or that issue, but they don't accept it because that is not the intention.
Right.
So I have noticed it's not now. It started, as I said, I'm not familiar with what they were doing before 2014.
So you think 5 years?
After the BJP's government in power, and this is again kind of an unusual, not an unusual, but this happened after a while, that there was just one single party in power. And they managed to not just create a narrative against everybody else in India with the other parties. They have convinced Indians that Pakistan is the enemy, Pakistan government is useless and weak, and it's Pakistan establishment that is doing everything that is happening in Kashmir, taking away the gravity of, trying to take away the gravity of what is happening in Kashmir. This is how it can be, put into a very few words.
Okay.
It is all about Kashmir.
Right.
Whatever's happening in Kashmir, instead of looking at that, they try to, highlight the so-called terrorists. They call it terrorism, but people there call it freedom fight, whatever way you want to watch it. It's all about Kashmir.
Okay.
They just don't want people to talk about it.
The Vajpayee years, right? A.S. Dullat. The first line is, the only thing straight in Kashmir are the poplar trees.
Yeah.
Is it really that complicated?
I think it is. It has been made complicated over the years. It is a no-brainer. It got somehow convoluted with this political drama that was being played on both sides. And I believe it's not just one particular side that we can blame on this. Kashmir, as a continued crisis in Kashmir, has kind of benefited both sides to a certain extent. Let's be honest about that. More so the Indians, though. I mean, the realization that we can continue to burn Kashmir on the back burner and play politics over it is basically a reflection of what has happened recently. Which is why, in a lot of ways, the continued crisis in Kashmir is not something that is being solved, but more so it is becoming a part of the Indian political discourse.
Yeah.
You've securitized the issue, you've militarized the issue, but more so what is dangerous, and I think I agree with Mehr on that point as well, and to continue from that point, is that we need to look at this problem from a regional perspective. A lot of our analysis on the Pakistani media have been very much Pakistan-centric when it comes to solving the issue, Kashmir. We need to look at the regional side. What is going on in Kashmir right now? What is going on more so in India in terms of its slides toward extremism does not only impact India itself. The first victim is definitely the Indian sane voices and any liberal voices, but it has a direct impact on the region at large as well. And if it escalates to that point, the global level. Which again comes to this point that the global community needs to start recognizing this as a major flashpoint. It is not nuclear issue that is a flashpoint. It is India's slow and steady decline into extremism, which is dangerous, and they're using the armed forces.
What happened to democracy in India? What exactly happened? Is this the cause, or the 24-hour news channels which emerged, let's say around 2008, 2009, satellite television, proliferation of dozens of news channels, Arnab Goswami and Shukla and all these people, what's his name, Rajit Sharma, right? All these people, have they taken control of democracy in India?
I think this is the general global trend around the world. If you look at 2018 Global Democracy Index and you see the failure of neoliberal democratic political agendas around the world, and somehow that has, democracy itself has allowed these voices to come onto the surface. I mean, what is going on, like we were discussing earlier, that what is going on in India right now is essentially something that has built up over the last decade or so, more so in the last 5 years. It is only that it's coming on the surface now. For a very long time, it was shoved under the glittery Bollywood image.
Yeah.
But the fact that it...
But Bollywood tends to swing, right? If we see the late 90s, a lot of movies were made about Kashmir. Mission Kashmir, Lakshya.
No, but they were, again, they were, the only thing those movies managed to do was, again, confuse the audiences about what was happening there. Even now, it was in 2014 that Heather was made. It was a brilliant movie. It showed Kashmir the way it is. They talked about all sides. They talked about
but that's
the
what
origin.
They do. I mean,
it was a good movie, and India showed the movie. Again,
but what was its central thread?
that Kashmiris want their voices to be heard, their right of self-determination to be heard. The problem is, what I have noticed is because I talk to people from all sides, only on Twitter. For instance, you know, if
you're dangerous.
People talk to me. You know, the last chapter in my book, and for which I got quotes from different Indians, prominent Indians and Pakistanis. Now, in my book, I got a quote from Mirwais Umar Farooq Abdullah, as well as Shaheen Lone. I think, I'm sorry, I think I'm saying his name wrong, but he was in the government.
Right.
So he was a separatist who had become separatist, freedom fighter, whatever word
Who chosen to become political mainstream.
Absolutely. So he was in the government. So I got a point of view of all of them. What has happened, what I have noticed is, as I said, since, you know, there is an Indian police officer who follows me on Twitter, and the kind of narrative he has about what's happening. Then there is
not just Punjab.
Then there is a young. Yes, of course, he blames everything on Pakistan, and we even got into a huge argument one day, and I was trying to make him understand that we don't have anything to gain by what's happening, and even your own leaders are saying things that are different from what you people are trying to put forward. The only thing is, they say, India says that everything that is happening in Kashmir is because of Pakistan's military, armed, militant, now terrorist, any kind of intervention. That Pakistan is making people do things in India, in Kashmir. There is no movement, there is no fight, there is nobody who's willing to get up and go against Indian government if Pakistan decides to take a step back. And that is what they are trying to do. That when it's a stone pelter, a teenager, they do not want to see what made him, what compelled him to do something like that. Pulwama, a 20-year-old, when he kills himself. I'm not sitting here trying to justify it as a Pakistani who's seen so much terrorism in Pakistan. No, I would not justify an act of terrorism.
Even Pulwama, we really don't know. All we have is a video, right? And if we do a forensic analysis of that video, there isn't even absolute proof that it was actually Adil Dar who made that video, or he said exactly what he said. And that is the only evidence that has been presented in saying Jaish was involved. Jaish, what has been the, let's say, the incidents or the intensity of incidents that Jaish has been involved with?
You see, when you have major global flashpoints in terms of Kashmir or Palestine or elsewhere, one of the key things that emerge is that the discourses around it become very much securitized and politicized. Right. What happens then is that you create bogeymen. And then those bogeymen allow you to create a particular brand of politics around it. And this is exactly what has happened. Jaish or no Jaish, the question is whether there is large, massive support against the Indian forces in Kashmir or not. And we see that...
It's over 500,000.
You have video after video, human rights report and every report.
And from India.
And from India as well, which is explaining how the situation has gone volatile. So to blame it on Jaish, I mean, we don't have the evidence to say yes or no on that, but to blame it on Jaish is kind of more convenient. That look, the Jaish has done it, when we don't see any sort of major activities by Jaish in Kashmir in a very long time. We can say that it may be having recruiting in the background, etc., providing substantial support. That is exactly the sort of evidence that Prime Minister Imran Khan is asking for. Because otherwise, in the absence of any evidence, I mean, if we give a comparable example of 9/11 and the post 9/11 events that happened, Steve Cole wrote a very interesting book on the first few months of that Directorate S, where he explains that Mullah Umar and Taliban were not actually against the entire, they were sympathetic to the Americans. And they did ask the Americans that if you have any reliable evidence against Osama bin Laden, we will hand him over to you. The problem was, and this is written by Steve Cole in his book, that the Americans had blood on their mind. They wanted to make a war. And they were not refused. They did not want to give any evidence. I would try to put the same context over here that given the political pressures, the elections, India wanted to heat up a war with Pakistan, create a hysteria. So Jaish become an easy, convenient target.
Bogeyman, I mean...
and this is exactly what Prime Minister Imran Khan has been talking about for a very long time, that look, as long as the Kashmir issue is going to continue going on, events like these are going to happen, and they're going to be put on conveniently to groups that are supposedly being acting inside from Pakistan. I mean, there may have been or may have not been a direct support of Pakistan on these groups, but the fact is that this incident cannot be linked back to Pakistan. If there was a substantial link, Indians would have been very actively putting it on the media, as we can say it.
Absolutely.
We still don't have any evidence on that.
So let's pick it up. We've got to take a short break. We'll take a break and we'll come back and we'll pick it up exactly from here. So welcome back. So Mehr, let me ask you, right? As a mother, you have a young son, right? Your son is what, 20 years old?
19.
19. So that would be the kind of age that young recruits in the army on either side would be sent off to war by their mothers, by their fathers. So I'm going to talk more about the mother concept, the whole concept of the motherland, right? And sending off your young sons and now even daughters. Right, even daughters fly jet aircraft, and they're fully involved. So how do you look at it, right? Again, thinking of the young Kashmiri mother, or the Kashmiri mother with her young sons.
Because most of these people who have been killed in the last few years, whose deaths have become very prominent in a positive way for a number of Kashmiris and in a negative manner for India, are very young.
Burhan. From
Burhan to this person, Adil. I mean, imagine a 20-year-old deciding to do what he is alleged, I mean, what they are saying he has done. If it was him or it was somebody else, or the names could be different, the faces could be different, the idea is the same. There is a very strong sense of it's not just injustice. They believe. Now, I'm not talking as a Pakistani, I'm not talking as an Indian, I'm just looking at it as the point of view of a human being and as a mother. India refuses to acknowledge that most of the Kashmiris are not happy with the way things are. It's as simple as that. Just because there is a government in India, in Kashmir, just because elections take place, just because there are pro-India Kashmiris in Jammu and Kashmir, they want the world to believe that nothing is wrong. So instead of, I'm saying it as a human being to the Indian government, that it's not
the Indian people rather than Mr. Modi.
It is because it is so sad to see Indian people, when you're talking to people on Twitter, that's the only way we know what India is thinking. They have so much negativity and hatred vis-a-vis Kashmiris, young Kashmiris. They do not have any sympathy for a 20-month-old baby girl whose eye has been destroyed by a pellet, or a young Insha who was blinded, or like literally thousands of people who have been blinded and maimed. They say that they deserve this, that they'll pick up a stone to hit us, we will hit them back. So they say that Kashmir is an integral part of us. We will never let go of Kashmir. But it's very obvious they want Kashmir. They don't give a damn what happens to Kashmiris.
I will also change a sort of a lens to this, because I think that's very important. Growing up in Pakistan and being in Pakistan, it gives us a particular lens to look at Kashmir. I do not think the issue between India and Pakistan is Kashmir. The issue between India and Pakistan is actually India and Pakistan. Kashmiris are the victims that we have both used and politicized to fight over a particular object.
Everybody wants Kashmir, but not the Kashmiris. Huh?
Exactly. So Kashmir has become a sort of convenient discourse for both India and Pakistan to fight over as a flashpoint. The truth is, there is a problem between India and Pakistan. That needs to be resolved.
What is that problem?
I think it is.
Is it historical? Is it non-acceptance of
it is neither partition, it is not acceptance, it is psychological.
But India, if you go back into antiquity also, has rarely existed in the size that it is today. The Indus Valley was hardly ever part of the larger part of India, right? There were small periods, right, in which it was part of that. So where is this whole thing coming
India actually wrongly took the name India. All the Indus Valley civilization and etc. is in Pakistan. So the name itself is strange. But you see, The issue with India and Pakistan, like I already said, it is more psychological now. And it has become, I mean, if you look at India and Pakistan as individuals, it might allow you to have a better understanding. They have been in a sort of, geographically they cannot separate. So they have been in a sort of very strange sort of arranged setting.
Yeah.
Where over the long period of time, the issue has become psychological. And when it becomes psychological, nothing matters. Then it could be partition, it could be nuclear, it could be anything. The core issue is in the way they see each other.
Are we that far advanced that we are so psychopathic that we could actually contemplate a miscalculation, escalation, leading to a nuclear holocaust? Is that really how mad we are?
I think that's exactly where what we have demonstrated in the past 70 years. You have two countries suffering from poverty, all sorts of diseases, malnutrition, but head on with each other in the arms race. Right. Both have nuclear weapons, but they cannot solve their poverty issues. So that tells you one thing. Yeah. It is that it is a psychological problem at the nation level. We have not been able to pursue nation building agenda individually. India has been good at one thing, and I'm sorry to interrupt.
No.
India has been good at one thing, and that has been its marketing. Apart from that, the problems that exist in India are actually worse than what we have in Pakistan.
The scale is much, much bigger.
So in that sense, I agree 100% with Prime Minister Imran Khan. He has the vision. He can see what exactly this issue is all about.
Peace, right?
Sit down together, solve this issue, and it will start with small steps.
But it's so interesting that these two countries are so close to one another geographically that you don't know where one ends and where the other starts.
Absolutely.
So obviously, I do believe there is a lot of similarity in our behavior, in our mindset, in our idea of not letting go of the history.
Abhinandan even loved our cup of tea.
History of bloodshed.
And liked it.
Look, I think people, when you talk about media, and I'm going to bring media back into the equation because everything we know about India comes from their media and everything they know about us comes from our media. So I believe media can play a very important role.
It's also behavior as a nation. It's
no, but behavior because honestly, the two of you and me, I've been to India 6 times. The Indians I met anywhere else in the world. My son, whose best friend and roommate in New York right now, is an Indian, Rohit from Bombay, and so all of us know that Indians like Pakistanis and vice versa. There is no problem between Pakistanis and Indians anywhere in the world. Whenever you tell an Indian in India that you're from Pakistan, honestly, their behavior becomes so much nicer. They are very nice to Pakistanis. And the same thing happens to Indians in Lahore or anywhere else. They go back with stories of love and warmth and hospitality. What I have noticed is that Indian government, I am not taking Pakistan's side. One, I believe that Imran Khan's entire career as a politician, and Imran Khan, the Prime Minister, is very categorical about one thing, that he does not want war with any country. He wants all wars to end. He wants warring countries to talk to one another. He wants a dialogue. And two, he has said it again categorically, that I'm ready to talk to you even if the first topic of the agenda would be terrorism, because they said that should be the first. He has said this on national television to Indian government. Now it's up to them.
Why the pushback? Why non-acceptance? Is there so much distrust, or is it just?
It's bad timing.
It's bad timing.
It's bad timing. There is no distrust. You see, even if I can show you this thing. Banking on my foreign policy and security policy expertise, even if Prime Minister Modi wins again, the first thing that will happen is peace dialogue between India and Pakistan.
You're convinced of that?
I'm convinced on this.
And what happens if the Congress wins?
Still the same result.
Thing?
The only difference would be that Congress will not have the same level of muscle because BJP would be pushing back on the...
So we want Mr. Modi to win then, do we?
I mean, if I specifically think from a realist perspective, Prime Minister Modi, as soon as he wins, he might be better for Pakistan because he would be willing to engage.
That is a very, very serious statement to make.
It is very serious, partly because he has damaged his credibility across the world. The first thing he will need to do is replicate what Prime Minister Imran Khan has done. He will have to replenish his entire PR and everything. And the first thing he's going to do, any Prime Minister of India, they will have to talk about the Kashmir and Pakistan dialogue. That will be the starter. Because right now the timing is so bad that you cannot practically expect any prime.
No, that I understand. You got elections just 60 days away. Right? This is one part, big part of the electioneering.
Unprecedented how the elections have, for the first time, included a war as well. So it is strange.
Wag the dog.
Wag the dog. Absolutely. It is. It even includes, you know, a soldier who's going to be repatriated. That is what Wag the Dog's main theme was.
You see, there are very interesting takeaway messages from this entire fiasco as well. And I think the Pakistanis and overall the nation has to look at from the macro perspective as well on this. One of the strangest things we have seen, strangely good things we've seen, is the overall evolution of Pakistani society. There was a time when people would make politics,
crush India stickers, flags,
and not,
right?
But somehow the only reaction was actually very sophisticated and interesting memes.
I mean, the person who works in my house, he said to me, "Baji, Jammu Kashmir da issue solve nahi ho sakta." There was an Indian journalist, very prominent one, texted me yesterday. And he said, what is the mood in Lahore? I said, you know, people are going about their life, trying to pay the bills, trying to make the children study for the exams.
There was no
I said, there is nobody. I said, it's not just, I'm not saying this to you. There is nobody in Pakistan, politicians, government, opposition, the Fauj, you know, the bogeyman.
My key question is,
nobody's talking about
right-wing political parties, Jamaat-e-Islami, Jamiyat-e-Ulama, all these small factions that would come out and take rallies against India, nowhere to be seen.
I saw one tweet just before we started the program where there's a camp, there's supposedly a Jamaat-e-Islami camp, recruiting people for jihad.
Oh God!
Right? But I haven't seen one. I've driven around Lahore. I had to go to Gulshan
We've never seen these. Yes.
Band area. You know, nothing.
Only Indians tell us about these protests and these rallies.
Not one car with one flag or anything.
And that used to be very much there in the 1990s. So that again, the takeaway message is that the Pakistani society, because of 17 years long war, has evolved into maturity, which tells you one thing, that where we are heading is actually a very right direction, and that will eventually benefit us. And it is my hope, and I have a lot of love for India. It is my hope that India gets out of this war hysteria and hyper radicalization, because Pakistan cannot be stable with Afghanistan destabilized on one end and India into hyper radicalization on the other end. We need to have compassion and love across the borders to ensure that as we grow, our neighbors also grow with us.
Tell me something. What was happening in the last 10 years in the Foreign Office? What was Pakistan doing? Right? Why have we allowed the right wing in India to take so much control of the narrative in international perception? Right? Where have we really
That's $1 million question.
Right? It's $1 million question.
There is a very simple reason.
Because it's $1 million, we'll take it after the break. Right? So, while we count the $1 million, just take a short break, get yourself a cup of coffee and join us. Welcome back. So, let me start with you, Mehr.
George Galloway.
George Galloway, what about George Galloway?
Because he
so what does he say?
He spoke about about what's happening in Kashmir and how India is ignoring what's happening in Kashmir, and he even talked about the British blunder of partition, where they refused to take into consideration the wishes of the Kashmiris who wished to join Pakistan at that point in time. What I have noticed is that for the first time ever since I have started to pay attention to what India says about Pakistan.
Does that have something to do with your wisdom tooth?
I think I lost it.
Oh, you lost it.
Years ago. What I've noticed is that the world has started to talk about Kashmir without hyphenation with Pakistan and India. There are articles being written in Washington Post, New York Times, Economist, Guardian, Telegraph. Everybody's talking about it. For once, it's not about Pakistan attacking India or India retaliating and saying Pakistan is a terrorist state. Pakistani people are wonderful, but Pakistani establishment is horrible, as if, you know, Pakistani establishment is from Mars, and they don't understand that every second family has a Fauji in the family.
Let's move on, right? So, couple of things. So, we had a joint session of Parliament, right? And I have not seen such rationality and sanity. right, in our parliament, where there wasn't fulmination, there wasn't that, hate rhetoric and all that. Peace overtures were made. We announced the repatriation of Abhinandan. There was no pressure. The Geneva Convention does not require you to release a prisoner of war while there are hostilities still imminent, right? So he cannot participate.
Yes.
It's, I think, this third schedule or something. So, I mean, this whole thing from India saying, oh, there was Geneva Convention, there was pressure, there was this, there was that. So let's look at it in the context of the media again, in terms of how things have been distorted. Even on our side, one of our channels claimed that we had 3 pilots instead of just 1, right? There was never any evidence of that. India claimed shooting down an F-16. There is absolutely zero evidence of that. In fact, an analyst on an Indian show, sitting there when he was being shown a picture of an aircraft, supposedly the F-16, said that's actually a MiG-21.
So the only evidence that is there is actually contrary to the claim.
No, not just Pakistanis and Indians, foreign analysts have said that it is not.
The Cyber Policy Center of Australia, I think they've done an analysis of the satellite imagery and all that. And they said, well, these bombs landed exactly where Pakistan says they landed, at a distance from any, let's say, settlement. Whether they were there was a camp there or whether they were just people, right, in their houses there. It landed 200, 250 yards away. But Ajay Shukla, right, spun that and said, well, it's because we didn't want to target anything.
So India has been having competing discourses as well, because I think this was done in such a haste. There was no proper mechanism of it, partly because you can tell that there was a political party agenda to it. And when you have a particular political party agenda to it, the ideology and mechanism is not translated throughout the armed forces and the institutions, which is why when the attack happened, the defense secretary had no idea.
She wasn't even in the meeting.
She was not in the meeting. And most importantly, there is a chatter that the Indian Defence Forces is not really pleased with what is going on right now. They are following a particular orders, but there was no larger consensus on this entire issue. So when you have politicization of events like this, you have chatter that is completely contradictory. 350 people, we got killed. Now they're saying that we actually conducted raids from our side of the territory and we never entered Pakistan space. So if you have a particular...
We fired a standoff weapon, right?
Because Indian media keeps talking about the Geneva Conventions and putting it in technical words. Article 118, first paragraph of the 1949 Geneva Convention 3, prisoners of war shall be released and repatriated without delay after the cessation of active hostilities. In the the present scenario of continuing hostilities, Abhinandan could have been held much longer by Pakistan, but Pakistan released him without any external pressure, conditions, suspense, drama. And that is what has really disappointed Indian media.
The thing is that the moment Pakistani military captured Abhinandan, there was a general expectation from the global community, specifically from the Indian side, that Pakistan will never release him. They wanted to build a narrative around it that we're going to press it and we're going to make Pakistan look bad. Turns out, Pakistan released it before the pressure even started off.
48 hours.
48 hours you had Pakistani Prime Minister coming and saying, we're going to happily release the guy.
No, because they intended to what we were talking about yesterday, that if they wanted the pilot to disappear, he wouldn't have been brought in front of cameras. There wouldn't have been any child videos or anything. They could have simply said that
I'm very curious. Why did they send a wing commander into battle in a MiG-21? Right, when you have
Prime Minister Modi has given a response to that. You did not allow me to have a Rafale deal.
Did you hear that? He said it today in India Today conclave. He was criticizing because he got a chance to criticize the opposition.
You didn't let me buy the Rafale, so we had to...
This is exactly why the Rafale deal was needed. So I think that tells you a lot on exactly what has happened. I think Rahul Gandhi gave a very good statement on that.
What did he say?
He specifically responded in a very...
Rahul Gandhi
way that this is extremely disappointing and tells a lot about your leadership, that you're essentially politicizing the issue, which has been the case since the first day. I mean, if you look at as an outside analyst, it is not hard to actually tell what has gone on. We were earlier discussing about it. These are classic tactics of fascist regimes all over the world. And I'm not calling this Indian regime a fascist regime. I believe that this word is way too strong. But the fact is that fascist regimes all over the world even Nazi tactics.
Yes.
We remember
we were talking about earlier about the Reichstag fire, the attack on
Spanish Civil War,
the German radio station, supposedly by Polish soldiers, right, which created the pretext to walk into Poland.
The Indian Prime Minister said it yesterday that now the entire, it was in Hindi, but he was saying that the entire world has acknowledged how strong India is, and he was talking about India's power and India's importance and everything else. And there is no doubt about India's significance globally. We have no issue with that. India is a huge country, size-wise, population, their economy, everything else. But that is what I don't understand. What is the big deal about starting a dialogue with Pakistan? You know, the smaller, insignificant neighbor that shouldn't exist.
Well, not exactly insignificant. You're okay.
No, in their words.
Let's just come to another one. This is a very interesting one. The Chinese, right? The Chinese statement recently about saying we neither recognize India nor Pakistan as a nuclear state. Right? So, which to me means you may have nuclear weapons, but you're not part of the club.
Yeah.
Right? So you're not part of the club, which means that we can at any point in time turn around and we can actually hold you responsible.
Yeah.
Right? So that is a very significant statement.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
The first reading.
It mean?
It means that even though you may have nuclear weapons, you are not a recognized nuclear state, which means 5 of them. The 5, the
as if it's anything to take pride in.
The Security Council
the NSG, yes.
The suppliers group,
and refusal of NSG to let India be inducted.
So that's a very significant statement.
It is a significant statement, but I want to know further the context to this statement, because that would be the key on this. If it is in the context of the nuclear supplier group, it would go in favor of Pakistan, because it is classifying India with the same position. So that's a significant statement, though, geopolitically as well. Regardless of that, I think Chinese position on this has been very much talked about, because China has not
It's a very mature position.
It's a mature position. And I think Chinese have dealt in a way where it has come out as a big brother in the region, where it has asked both sides to
de-escalate.
But OIC has shocked most of us.
Coming to that.
Have they? Because yes, they invited Sushma. They did not resign the invitation.
It was done
that won't have
a long
made sense.
time.
Obviously.
No, it could have made sense. You know, you can turn around and say, well, circumstances have changed. So we cannot. Pakistan is not an insignificant member of the OIC. In the context of the OIC, Pakistan is one of the strongest members.
It is very strong. It is strong.
In every manner, in terms of population, in terms of,
but
its
it has worked.
capability. What is worked?
Maybe I think our foreign minister should have attended the summit, but he didn't. But the result has been what Pakistan wanted it to be. Those 52 countries have taken notice of what's happening in Kashmir, because let's be honest, Muslim countries do not really care beyond what's happening within their own countries. And for the first time, at least in my recent memory of things, they have talked about Kashmir. They want the world to take notice of what's happening in Kashmir. And I think that's quite
There's something
wonderful.
about the Saudi foreign minister also visiting both India and Pakistan. So he was coming to Pakistan. Now apparently he's going to India first, and then he's coming to Pakistan. So the world is concerned, right, about 2 nuclear states going eyeball to eyeball. Huge amount of rhetoric.
You see, I personally, wearing my scholarly hat, I tend to be very skeptic about the world getting involved and the world being very concerned. 70 years of concern of the world. Look at Palestine, look at Kashmir. You see, the same world, the same global powers have been funding.
But there is a UN resolution also.
UN resolution, but the same powers, the French, the British, the Americans have been funding in arms, weapons and all. So who actually, I mean, I usually say this thing, although for the last 70 years we have decolonized India and Pakistan, but have we really decolonized?
No.
We have still
colonized.
These, like, these flashpoints like Palestine, Kashmir, initially Vietnam and all these places, they allow the same colonial past to actually the military industrial complex to still sell weapons in these countries. So I don't have much hope from the international
community. Keep the friction
community.
alive, right? Keep the friction alive.
If there is any hope, I'll be very honest, if there is any hope, I think the current government in Pakistan allows a brilliant opportunity to the Indians and to the other actors in the region who are, I mean, I think China is definitely interested in this region. Iran is definitely interested in peace. Turkey. These are the key actors that actually want this issue to be solved. I think the current setup in Pakistan and the emerging setup that will come out of these crises in India, I think if I have to bet on it, I think we will definitely have some level of solution on this issue.
And this brings to mind the other thing that Indian politicians, Indian governments keep saying, that Pakistani Prime Minister does not have any power as long as the military establishment and then they say Imran Khan is the establishment spawn. So I think this should go in Pakistan's favor if they believe Imran Khan, elected Prime Minister, is the
that just
establishment
reminded me of
spawn.
something. Yesterday, right, one of the kind of senior people from Dawn, right, he's not Dawn anymore, I think. So he tweeted and said, well, the isolation of Pakistan is what exactly was Dawn leaks all about. From what we know of Dawn leaks, it wasn't about the isolation of Pakistan.
What isolation?
It was, well, if it was isolation, then, you know, the Prime Minister / Foreign Minister, right, had some responsibility along with Mr. Fatimi and, you know, everybody else. So what is your take on that? What about Dawn leaks?
I've seen some tweets and I've seen some political party-led conversation on this issue that, look, Dawn leaks was all about this and now this is happening, so essentially we were right. The former Prime Minister was right. It is so silly to actually even talk about this thing, because Dawn leaks, the issue was not about the civilian brass telling military that, look, we are isolated. The issue was very, very unfortunate that a sitting government, a federal minister, leaks sensitive security conversations from the highest national security forum out in the media to embarrass a particular institution. That is treasonous.
Even though the conversation might have taken place. Right? But you're not at liberty to release that.
You see, the military's concern was not what the content of the conversation was. The military's concern was that, how can you be so irresponsible and reckless to do something like this? That kind of wedges a divide between the civil and the military. You see, some people have been saying that, look, it is the military running the show and the current government has no role on it. Fine. The military has been running the show for the last 10 years as well. What has changed now is the government. There is a civil-military balance. So this entire idea that the Dawn leaks and this was all about, Dawn leaks was not about this. Yes, the former prime ministers were essentially talking about the same issue, that we need to have peace with India. So has been the military establishment. The problem has been not that we don't want peace with India. The problem was how to proceed on peace. The strategy was a problem. What we have right now is the civil and the military on the same page on the strategy and the tactical.
What kind of rethink, what kind of reset, what kind of reimagining does India and Pakistan need, right, to bring things closer to a resolution, to understanding that there is a massive dividend of peace for about 1.5 billion people in India and Pakistan, then around it, right? So what do we need to do? Do we need to step back from where we are? Right? What kind of engagement?
I think
Pakistan's point of view.
What we have done, what Pakistan has done, has essentially been pivotal in this entire scheme of affairs. Because in Pakistan, in the last decade or more, especially through General Musharraf era and before that, we have depoliticized the Indian issue in our elections. That's the first key. You depoliticized it, which is why our entire parliament at the time of war was talking about peace. This is unprecedented in any civilized country in the world. You had Americans after 9/11 and Iraq war calling for war. Liberal most activists in the US calling for war. You see Pakistan and you're surprised that who are these people? I mean, it's hard to recognize them. So that's one big deal. India has to depoliticize Pakistan from its election rhetoric, first thing. Second and more important thing is that prioritizing this, the entire scheme of affairs. If you're going to start off directly with Kashmir, you're not going to reach anywhere at all. You need to start small. And like I said again, Kashmir is
so Kartarpur was that small beginning.
Kartarpur was that beginning. You develop trust, you develop it. Start the cricketing ties again. Start these essential things, and then you're going to reach there.
Everything that has come from Indian government in the last 4 years is exactly the same. That we will not talk to Pakistan unless terrorism emanating from Pakistan comes to an end. And when Pakistan Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif and now Prime Minister Imran Khan, they are both very clear about it, that they will not allow any, especially Imran Khan, as the Prime Minister has said it categorically, that Pakistan will not allow any Pakistani to carry out any kind of terrorism against any country or within Pakistan. So now it has been said clearly, it is all about India. It is all about what India is going to do. And between you and me, as much as I love a lot of things about India and their movies and their songs, India will not want to have a peaceful relationship with Pakistan.
So what do you think of Adnan
as I'm
Sami?
concerned?
Major Adnan Sami.
I really like some of his songs, and I think what has happened.
Especially the Lift Kara De one?
Not that one. So there are some beautiful songs that he did when he was like very, very overweight, and he managed to get.
You can't body shame. No,
I'm not body shaming. I'm not body shaming. You have to let me finish. There were beautiful songs, and he didn't care what he looked like. He got some of the most beautiful women in Bollywood to act in those videos. That's his power. But I have never, on a serious note, he has done
a very good job as an undercover.
Don't say that. On a serious note, I have never understood why Adnan Sami has anything against Pakistan. Pakistan has always loved him as a singer. He may not have made it very big, but he was very popular in his own little way. And I don't understand where the hatred comes from, this negativity. But what's happened to him on Twitter is, I don't know, it's not good.
Put him in a very dangerous spot, living in Mumbai with a sword hanging on you if you're an agent. I think that has been
okay. So last, let's say 2 weeks, has that tightened the noose around Kulbhushan's neck or loosened it?
Kulbhushan is not even in the conversation.
It's not even in the conversation. So what does that mean? Is there a loosening of the noose, or is there a tightening of the noose?
Depending on which lens are you looking from. From the Indian perspective, they can actually forget Kulbhushan for some time.
They have forgotten.
Oh, but the case was on just as this thing happened.
And even then, it did not make the major headlines.
It suddenly went away. Nobody's talked about it.
Now people are talking about Adnan Sami.
Right. So why don't we invite Narendra Modi over to come and have a plate of harissa with us, right? And maybe have a conversation. Sure? Right? Maybe a cup of coffee with us. Would you like to have a cup of coffee
meat in it?
I mean, okay. Whatever, we can all dream of peace.
You see, Prime Minister Modi took 5 years to actually rebrand himself. Before he became the Prime Minister, he was still on the blacklist for travel list to
2013, he couldn't travel to the US.
And then he hired a very...
So we're going to wrap up. So it's been an interesting time. We're going to have more conversations about this. I think there's so much to explore. And for whatever it's worth, right, if we can maybe point some things in the right direction to policymakers, both on our side as well as in India, because people are people, right?
They want peace.
I don't think that we even crave any kind of conflict.
Absolutely.
The other does not need to be your enemy. It just needs to be different from you. And let it be different. So thank you very much for staying with us. Hope you've enjoyed this conversation, and do let us know what you think.